Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you another review. As I record this, you guys can see I'm still in Florida. Yay! It's a Monday as I record this. You can tell from the title up there, I'm reviewing the latest entry in the TMNT film series, the reboot released by Nickelodeon, the first film that they've done with the characters since they acquired the rights to them, and the second thing they've done overall, the first, of course, being the new animated show, which I've only seen snippets of, and with all honesty, I could say, Nickelodeon, you better stick to doing episodic stuff, because this movie, oy vey. I'm not going to say it was god-awful to the point where it has no redeeming qualities, because it has some good points, but it's not enough to save the film, and yes, that's a bird. Even the bird hated the film. This is definitely going to be on the worst films of the year list. Like I said, there was some redeeming moments, but not enough to save the film as a whole. Now, I will say with honesty that the fault I do not place on director Jonathan Liebesman's, or Liebesman. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Liebesman's shoulders. I don't place it on his shoulders. Because he has directed some films I've liked. I mean, I did like Darkness Falls, even though it's been a while. I'm in the group that actually doesn't mind Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, except, of course, maybe for the ending. I mean, I'm about the same size as Leatherface, and even I couldn't sit in the back seat comfortably without someone noticing, especially with a fucking chainsaw. Battle LA is probably his best film so far. Wrath of the Titans, I'm actually, I think, in the minority that actually like that film, and with all honesty, I actually enjoyed that film a lot more than this one. I'd have to say that probably the fault for this film does lie on the producer, Michael Bay. Now, he did not write the screenplay, but as the producer, with how much pull he seems to have, I'd have to say he probably did approve the script and what went into it. And if you've seen his Transformers films, which honestly I've only seen the first one, you'll recognize some of the stuff here, and it is kind of sad to see that this is where the Turtles are now. I mean, I haven't seen TMNT 3 in a while, and I haven't seen the CGI film in a while, but I was in the camp that actually liked that film, even though I will admit it does kind of seem more like the plot would fit more an animated show, like a three-parter, but that's a different review. I can honestly say this is probably the worst film. I mean, even with its flaws, I think 3 might be a little bit better, but like I said, I haven't seen that film. I mean, before we watched the film, me and Jen watched the first two live-action films, which I'll probably record reviews for those sometime after I'm done with this one. But I'd say it's probably Bay's fault because there seems to be a lot of Bayisms in the film. Now, of course, with the online things, it has a 6.4 on IMDb and a 62% with the critics, which I think is a little too damn high. The ratings for this TMNT movie online are too damn high. You know that thing. Probably some of the people that watched the film were too damn high. I know that's kind of a cheap tongue joke, but I had to say it is jokingly. I mean, if you like the film, that's cool. It's just me. I agree more with the critic score, which is 20%, and this is the consensus. Neither entertaining enough to recommend nor remarkably awful, TMNT may bear the distinction of being the dullest movie ever made about talking bipedal reptiles. And that's more or less accurate, because probably the best thing about this film is that it does nail home the personalities of each individual turtle, where you may or may not like their designs, which I'll say the lip thing, it's one thing you might get used to, you might not. To me, I was like, man, with it. And they didn't really give a story explanation for why the turtles have lips, especially considering Splinter doesn't have lips. He still has his normal rat face. But with some of the clothes, I could deal with, like with Leonardo's one. Granted, Donatello might be a little bit too high dressed, but especially since they don't give an explanation for where he got the stuff. But something you can get used to, especially since the film does take a few notes from the '80s cartoon, which is like we kind of grew up with that cartoon. It's nice to see some of them, but it still makes you scratch your head, like where they getting this stuff. And hello, Chiquita, one of the birds. Now, their personalities is probably the best thing about the film. April being a reporter, they actually throughout the film really do nail home the fact she has a reporter. It's actually nice to see the character of Vern from the cartoon in the movie, even if personality-wise he seems a bit different. But then again, without Vernon was in the show, I think it'd be a little hard to do a character like that live action without adding a little bit more to the character. Because even though I do love the '80s show for nostalgia, some of the side characters kind of had just one note personalities. But again, I haven't seen the entire show ever. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of some of the later seasons. It's just I have to probably go back and watch it. This is mostly coming from memory. The Foot Clan in this movie is vastly underdeveloped. I mean, in the original film, the Foot Clan was more developed, even though you really didn't know if Shredder had an endgame after he stole enough stuff, or whether or not that was just his whole plan. But then they leave enough to the imagination with it to where one can infer, okay, Shredder probably had a plan later on, but eventually became a revenge plan in the sequel, but a different review. Here, he does have a master plan, but it basically boils down to the stereotypical villain stuff we see. I'm going to poison the city, and then they're going to be forced to buy the antidote. I'm the Shredder. Fear me. Which the Shredder isn't the white guy from the trailers, played by, what was the guy's name? William Fichtner, that we all thought it was going to be, which is kind of a good thing and it's kind of a bad thing because he gets more screen time than the actual Shredder does. Most of Shredder's screen time comes when he's actually in that mechanical suit thing, which I said it when I first saw some of the design for the Shredder outfit revealed, and I'll say it again. It is too sophisticated. I mean, I would only accept that suit if this was Utrom Shredder, and there's not enough said in the film to say that this is Utrom Shredder, at least that I noticed. I will say I do like that they kept Shredder when he's out of the uniform in the shadows a lot. I think that added to his mystique. But there's not enough said about him, and also the fact since they don't use the typical turtle origin, it's like, really? What's the point of him going after them other than the whole thing they changed with the mutagen? Because they changed the backstory with that, which I'll get to in a bit. Now, the plot of the film is that, like usual, April O'Neil's a reporter in New York. This time she's for Channel 6 like she is in the cartoon. She is reporting about this organization called the Foot Clan, who's been terrorizing New York for a while. It's in a different capacity than the original films and even the '80s cartoon and even the '03 cartoon. Whereas in those ones, they're more like stealing stuff. And Ben Walton's seen the '03 cartoons, so I don't remember exactly what they were doing at the beginning. Always a phone. Which this is probably my main problem with the Foot Clan, and that is that they're more like a terrorist organization in this movie than they are ninjas. I mean, even when they're fighting the turtles, they're more like thugs than they are ninjas. And they use guns. They don't really use ninja weapons. It's like the only person in the Foot Clan who seems to be a legitimate ninja is Shredder. I mean, Karai a little bit, but she barely does anything. So Karai was basically wasted in this film. You could have just, I know they're doing a sequel. They should have saved it for the freaking sequel. Would have been a better idea to use Bebop and Rocksteady. Then you'd actually have a reason to use the mutagen. Like maybe they were the results of early attempt to try to recreate it, but it failed and made them stupid. That would have been a little bit better, but they're not even ninjas and they use guns and all that. Hey, the ninjas in Three Ninjas were more like ninjas in the Foot Clan here, and they use guns too, and they got their butts kicked by a bunch of kids. Now, eventually April meets up with the turtles. We see some of the stuff we see in the trailers. I'm not going to get to it. And this is where we begin to see their personalities. And eventually she's taken to the lair where she meets Splinter. And we find out their origin, that they are the result of an experiment conducted by Fitchner's character and April's father, which I don't really mind the fact that the mutagen comes from them a little bit. I don't mind that little change to the mythos for a couple reasons. One, I've only read the first issue of the new comics, but correct me if I'm wrong, isn't April or involved a little bit with their origin in that one, like in a laboratory? I seem to remember that. I don't have the issue on me, obviously. It's back home in California, but I remember something like that. And I know in the new cartoon that they did that April's father is a scientist, so a little bit of a combining of those two. And of course, in the original comics, April did work as an assistant to Baxter Stockman in the lab, but that was before he tried to kill her with the Mousers, which is how they introduced her in the '03 cartoon as well. But what they changed is that they experimented the mutagen on a rat, Splinter, and 4 turtles, which when the lab was destroyed, she let them go, so they kind of connect her into their origin with that, which, take it or leave it, I don't mind that. But the part about it that I hate that they changed is the fact that Splinter basically learns ninjutsu from a book he finds in the sewer, which is like, what did he find? Ninjutsu for dummies? I didn't know they made how-to guides. Maybe it's from Japan, I don't know, but how did it end up in the New York sewer? I think it would have been a better idea if they combined what they ended up doing in the film with the classic origin. Like maybe they found Splinter as a rat out on the streets after Yoshi was killed. Then you can combine that a little bit in with the Shredder. Like maybe have it mentioned a little bit in the dialogue when Splinter and the Shredder fight, because they actually do have a decent fight. I mean, it's not really like how I would have done it, but I thought it was actually decent that they actually had a fight, because none of the live action films before, even the CGI film, had Splinter and Shredder fighting. Granted, Shredder was only in the first 2, but their entire interaction in that was, Splinter basically tied up against the wall getting punched, and then him throwing Shredder off a building. I know they fought in the '80s cartoon and they fought in the '03 cartoon, so nice there. But at least it's nice to finally see the pair fight. And of course, Splinter gets beat up. But I test that more to the armor that Shredder's wearing, which is more like a battle suit, like something Batman would wear to fight Superman. Which is kind of unfair that they gave that to him, and that's one of the Michael Bay-isms in the film. You can do that. You can see in it that they couldn't resist upping the Shredder's armor to make it more updated when there was nothing really wrong with his armor, his past armor to begin with. I think they should have just kept his armor the way it was, maybe slightly tweaked the design to update it, but not this much, because it borders on ridiculousness, as you see in the trailer, when he has all those knives pop out. It's like, really, dude? You're a ninja. That's a little bit too over the top. Even Michelangelo wouldn't go that over the top. And he does have a couple over the top moments in this film, mostly when he's trying to flirt with April. But like I said, they could have added some of the old origin into it, and I think that would have made it a little bit better. And also, it would have given Splinter a reason to actually dress in the Oriental costume. That's not the problem I have. It's just something I read in one of the reviews I read online after I saw the film. It's like, okay, that makes a little sense, but this would have made much more sense, especially for why he trained him, even if they didn't bring in the whole revenge for Yoshi thing in there, which that is kind of sad to see that we never got actually get that into a live action film, because I actually did like that in the original comic, that the reason Splinter was teaching the turtles was to avenge Yoshi's death. You can make the argument maybe there's a little bit of background thing for that in the first live action film. No, I've actually lost my place there. That's the one thing I hate about when the phone rings when I do these recordings. But let's see, what have I talked about already? Okay, the foot not really being ninja, Shredder's outfit being a little too overboard, origin being a little messed up. Now the turtles are a little big, which I had to take it or leave it. It bugged me only a little bit. The only thing about it that I didn't mind is that it's actually interesting to see the turtle shells actually in proportion to what they probably would be if 4 red-eared sliders, which is what the turtles usually are, type of turtles I have at home, would be mutated, because the shells, with how you see them, that's more like how they probably would be. Probably doesn't really matter since they're being mutated, but it was interesting to see how they would interpret that. I would have preferred the beaks, because turtles really do have beaks. Granted, their noses should be as prominent as we see them, because even when you look at a red-eared slider just holding in your hand, you can actually see its nostrils, so at least that aspect is actually accurate, but they should have beaks in there. Just they shouldn't be as beakish as, let's say, Toka from the second film. Where he has the very prominent beak. It's more like how the original designs were, it's like beak lips. That was a little bit better. Because it's a beak, you can tell it has that beak thing, but it's not like, like a parrot beak or something like that. Okay, I bet some of you are probably also wondering, what did I think about Megan Fox's April O'Neil? I can honestly say this is probably the best performance I've seen from her, but still, she did come off a little bit as miscast. I'm not gonna rant on her, but miscast, and also some of the stuff she said about the haters, I can partially understand, but doesn't really help her standing with me at least. Neither does what Michael Bay said, about you're going to still pay to see the movie. I do not know why I'm making Michael Bay sound like Jean-Claude Van Damme. Maybe because he wants the booty to be in focus. At least no turtle booties were in focus during the making of this film. But with Bay, he can kind of, kiss my you-know-what for what he said about the people. Granted, I like a couple of his films. Like, I liked Armageddon. I actually think Pearl Harbor is okay. I like The Island. Haven't seen it in a while. And in Pain and Gain, the film we did last year, was one of my favorite films of last year. I've only seen the first of the Transformers films, and that's where some of the Bayisms are coming. I haven't seen it in a while, but watching this film, I'm like, okay, this seems a little familiar. This seems a little bit familiar. It's probably going to be more so for those who have watched every Transformers film, especially Age of Extinction. The subtitle sounds like an 80s power metal band's album. Needs more cowbell. Anyway, the climax of the film, it's so. I'm not stopping this one. Who is it? Was it just a short one? I don't know what it is with the phone. We're popular, and now the dog's going after the bird. See, I know that I have a feeling I'm not going to like how I ended up doing all this review because all these interruptions are making me lose my train of thought. Then again, when you watch this film, you kind of get that whole thing too. It's like, it's like, bah. Anyway, the last 30 minutes, there is a lot of fighting, mostly between the Turtles and Shredder near the end, which, that's one thing I like, is that the fight is extended and it's on a rooftop, though I think it probably would be better to have it at night. And I'll say there's one thing I did like about the Infight, and that is at the end they actually defeat Shredder themselves using teamwork, which is, if I remember correctly, how they defeated him in the first issue. So it was nice to see that. It was actually nice that my boy Raphael was the one who actually had to break his brothers out of captivity, which it was nice. He's, him going in with all the weapons. That was kind of cool. Oh, he is a little bit too big out of all of them, but I kind of see why they're going with that. I mean, he's the one with the anger problem, so he probably works out a lot. One thing I will say is when they were explaining the origins of the Turtles, this is one thing I forgot to mention when I brought that up, probably thanks to the freaking phone. I did like that they did do a little flashback montage with it showing Splinter training them. That was actually kind of cool. Doing something like that. So see, even though the film overall sucks, it does have some good moments like that. You just needed a better constructed film around it. Just think of it, this movie was made, Wikipedia lists the budget is $125 million. For most of the summer blockbusters, that's like a lower budget. I mean, unadjusted for inflation, that's only $25 million more than what T2 cost. And I thought that film came out a lot more, and it's almost recouped that in just the opening weekend alone. But anyway, if you had given me $125 million in complete creative control, you would have had a better movie, even if it was only PG-13. But anyway, that's just me thinking about it. Anyway, the Turtle voice actors, I thought they did a good job. Obviously, they captured the personalities of the Turtles, right? And Johnny Knoxville voicing Leonardo, I actually didn't think he did that bad. Granted, he's not my favorite. I like Brian Tochi as the voice of Leonardo better, but I thought he did a good job. Tony Shalhoub voiced Splinter, which is kind of weird. I still like Kevin Clash a little bit better as Splinter, and even the voice actors who did him in the two cartoons, and even Mako did a better Splinter voice. But he was okay. But it just makes me think they should have, the whole thing I've already mentioned about his origin. Whoopi Goldberg as Bernadetta Thompson, which is basically a female version of Bern, or whatever his name is, or April's boss from the 80s cartoon. She has some of the personality down, but obviously they tone it down a little bit, but it's there, and she's only in the first part of the film, and of course she fires April. I mean, when one of your employees is trying to tell you about that there's a bunch of mutated Ninja Turtles out there, what are you going to do? Yeah. Obviously, I like April's firing in the original film better. I also get a little joke out of it. Sorry that this comes as a blow. Oh, yeah. You know that. There's a lot more about this film I could talk about, but I don't really think I want to go in and spoil everything about the film, because obviously, even though I don't like the film, you guys watch it and make up your own mind. Like it, hate it, but obviously, if I didn't like it, if you're a big Turtles fan like me, you probably might not like it, but then again, you might. I mean, one of the guys I'm friends with on Facebook, he liked it. A couple others also didn't like it, like John didn't like it. I have a very strong feeling that my turtle, my fellow turtle fan Matt is going to hate this film and tear it a new turtle dick. Those of you who haven't seen that picture, you won't get that joke. But more like tear the turtle dicks off and can them after pickling them. That actually goes more with that picture. Which if he does, which I don't think, based on what he said, I don't think he'll see the film. But if he does and he rants on it, I look very much forward to that one. Because he could probably do a better rant than what I've talked about with this. Because this is more like a mild rant. Because it's, for me, at the end of the day, it's man. Even though I was thinking about the film all day, and at the end of the day, I don't really have the energy to rant on it, especially since I'm in an apartment. I don't want to have, the whole, broom thing. Get it down up there. In case you're wondering, yes, the laptop is on my lap, which is why when I move like that, the screen jiggles a little. Let's see. My biggest problem with this film is it's lacking a heart. Granted, the turtle personalities are intact, and if you had made the story a little bit better, that could have been the heart of the film, as it is in the '90s film. And it's just, it lacks a lot of things. I didn't really feel compelled with the villains. Changing the backstory did piss me off a little bit. We needed a better April. I already mentioned the villains. His plan was a little bit too stereotypical villain, cliched stuff. And also the turtles. They did seem a little bit like they could do ninjutsu, but it didn't come. Maybe it's because of the fact that they weren't fighting fellow ninjas. It didn't come off as well. I mean, even in part 3, with the crappy animatronics in that film, when they're fighting the samurai, you really do get the feeling that they are ninjas. I mean, you still get that. With this one, you only get it because of the fact they talk about it, and also the fact they move a lot in the shadows from it. In the shadows, moving quickly without being seen until April sees them. But with how they filmed it, at one point in the film, I was waiting for someone to come up and go, "He's here." Who? The Batman. Literally, that's actually what I was thinking watching one of these scenes. I'm like, when's Batman going to show up? I'm Batman. What do you turtles think you're doing here? This is my jurisdiction. This is New York City. What? What's New York? Since Superman's supposed to be around here. Wait a minute. Why are you sounding like Christian Bale? You're supposed to be Ben Affleck. Hey, you're not supposed to do that. Hey, Raph, I think he stole your voice. Yeah, crappy joke like that. And of course, there's some in references to other stuff like, they're aliens? No, that would be stupid. Ha ha ha. And then, of course, making fun of the ridiculousness of the idea of Ninja Turtles, unless, of course, that it started as a parody. When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous. Ha ha ha, Donnie. Never really could think of anything anyway. Bossa Nova? Chevy Nova? Anyway, other than the turtles and their camaraderie and a couple of the, like the fight with Shredder, then how that ends, and also Splinter having a fight. Not really a lot of high notes. And there's a lot of moments in the film where you could tell Bay had it. And like I said, it's too mad. I think I've probably said that a couple times, and I think this review's gone on longer than I intend to do it. But it's just probably being kind and rating it for those few things I liked about it. I'd probably give it a 1, maybe 1.5 out of 5 for the few things about it I liked. Probably a second time around will be needed for this film, mostly to give a better in-depth thing, because this is definitely a film I probably would have to watch twice in order to do that, but I'm going to wait until it hits DVD for that. Anyway, current rating 1.5 out of 5 for the few things about it I liked. Now, of course, if I had time right now, I'd probably go back and watch the first film to get this film out of my head, but that's just me.